The movie begins during an outbreak of a disease called dengue fever, transmitted by mosquitoes. As the dengue patients develop into a mutated strain, displaying violent behavior, a man named Marasigan appears in prison. He is a former American Special Forces soldier, typically peaceful but strong. He is granted conditional release next month. Another individual named Timoi is involved in prison cleaning activities. They are confronted by a group of inmates questioning Timoi about their gang leader. Timoi refuses to speak to the authorities. Marasigan intervenes, inquiring about Timoi's delay. Marasigan talks to his wife, Butch, about their challenging situation, including taking care of their daughter Jane alone. Meanwhile, Butch receives a call from someone named Beth, but she struggles to understand the message due to the caller being in distress. A debt collector arrives at a neighbor's apartment who is infected with dengue fever, resulting in a violent altercation. Butch attempts to investigate but finds the power cut off. She leaves Jane in her bed and goes outside to see what's happening. Jane wakes up, rings her mother, and gestures for her to come back. Suddenly, infected neighbors attempt to attack Butch. She defends herself and Jane rings the bell again, prompting the infected to leave Butch and head towards Jane's apartment. Butch rushes inside, and Jane hits the doorbell again, causing the infected to turn back. Butch fights them off. Amidst the chaos, Butch loses track of Jane and leaves her apartment to search for her. The prison alarm sounds, allowing the inmates to leave. Timoi informs Marasigan about the situation outside. The prison quickly fills with infected individuals, transmitting the infection through bites to the inmates and guards. Timoi holds on to Marasigan to protect him, and the adventure begins between Marasigan and the infected, but they manage to defeat them and wear handcuffs to help them hit more effectively. In the end, they both manage to survive and board a car belonging to the prison, driving away to a quiet place. On the radio, it is broadcasted that the patients of the mutated strain are attracted by loud noises, and healthy citizens are advised to follow the instructions and stay in their homes for safety. Marasigan, along with Timoi, heads to his house to check on his wife and daughter. However, upon reaching the first floor, they find bloodstains and mutated strain patients in the building. They try not to make any noise so the infected won't attack them. Marasigan deduces that they are only attracted to the loud noises and are following them. Hua and Timoi attempt to evade them and not get too close, but Timoi notices a child in the same location with them, hiding to avoid harm. Marasigan points to the child and asks him to come, assuring him that he will help and passing his hand in front of some of the infected to prove that they won't see them. But the child is in a state of extreme fear and tension, and Marasigan uses sign language to prevent him from making any sound so they won't be tracked and attacked. The child moves cautiously and manages to reach Marasigan and Timoi unharmed. When they exit, Marasigan wields an axe and kills anyone who comes near them, while Timoi and David follow. Marasigan, Timoi, and the child successfully reach Marasigan's apartment without injuring anyone. Timoi asks about this child, named David, if he lives in the same building or not. When he answers that he lives in the building, Marasigan asks him about Jane and Butch, and he informs him that he saw Jane on the third floor during the chaos and the escape of the residents, confirming that she was alone and Butch was not with her. Marasigan enters his daughter Jane's room, deeply missing her and feeling joy when he sees a drawing she made, reassured that his daughter misses him too. Marasigan asks Timoi and David to leave the building because it's full of infected and they will be infected if they stay for a long time. Paulo, one of the residents, appears with his girlfriend, both hiding behind the door, afraid of the mutated strain patients. They sense a strange movement inside a cupboard. When Paulo investigates, he finds Jane hiding inside, very scared and in a bad condition. But an infected person attacks them. Paulo swiftly strikes the infected and asks his girlfriend to disable the battery, managing to save them and take Jane and his girlfriend away from the place they were in. David sees his mother as he exits with Marasigan and Timoi. When he sees her, he goes to her, leaving them. Timoi notices his absence and follows him. When David sees his infected mother, he breaks down in tears and clings to her, wanting to stay with her. However, Timoi manages to pull him away while trying to comfort him. At this time, Butch is on her own amidst the infected, trying to protect herself by not making any sound. One of the infected attacks her, causing her to faint. Marasigan comes to her rescue just in time and carries her away to a closed room, but the infected are able to catch up to them. They attempt to break the door to get in, and there are a large number of them. Marasigan resists to prevent them from entering, but they get closer to breaking the door. Timoi and David hear the noise and deliberately make a loud sound to attract them and divert them away from Marasigan and Butch's room. He gathers his courage for the first time, despite his weak personality, as Marasigan has always been responsible for protecting him. He fights off those approaching him, but ends up in a dead end and cannot escape or protect himself because their number is too large, resulting in him getting injured by them. Paolo and his girlfriend, along with Jane, gather and ask for help from their neighbor in the building named Oscar. They ask him to let them into his apartment to protect them from the patients, and Oscar agrees to let them in. Marasigan, David, and Butch also search for shelter, and David leads them to Oscar's father's house, where David is very happy to reunite with his father Oscar, who is delighted with his son's safe return, and David breaks down in tears, telling his father about his mother's difficult condition that he saw. Butch rushes to hug Jane, comforting her and assuring her that she thought Butch had abandoned her, but Butch assures her that she would never do that to her. Marasigan goes to Jane to check on her and apologizes to her for the time he was absent from them, reassuring her that he will not leave them again. He communicates with her using sign language, but he doesn't master it well yet, unlike Butch, and makes mistakes, which Jane corrects for him. Oscar goes to Marasigan and expresses his gratitude, thanking him for saving his son David, but Marasigan informs him that his friend Timoi is the one who saved him. At night, Marasigan decides to go to the hospital to treat Butch's wounds, but Oscar asks him to wait until morning so he can see clearly. He informs Marasigan that the city of Marikina is safer, and they all agree to move in the morning from the path Marasigan and Timoi came from. They all go to sleep to rest from the fatigue and exhaustion they experienced during their day. However, after a short while, Oscar goes to his son David to check on him, but he finds him bleeding from a wound on his leg, and his veins and arteries are turning into a dark blue color. He realizes that David is in the stage of transformation. Oscar reassures and tries to calm him down, helping him move to get out of the house as quickly as possible and go to the hospital. But the symptoms of transformation worsen for him, and Butch wakes up at the same time, calling on Marasigan loudly to save them from David. Marasigan quickly sets David on fire before he attacks Butch, and Oscar is overwhelmed with tears at the sight of his son. He raises his weapon and threatens them with it, preventing them from leaving. The infected hear the sound of gunfire and quickly head towards Oscar's apartment, but Marasigan, Butch, Paolo, and his girlfriend and Jane have already managed to leave the apartment. Oscar is at this time holding his son David and breaking down in tears over him. Marasigan, Butch, and Jane separate from Paolo and Hazel, his girlfriend. The infected attack Paolo and Hazel, attempting to bite them, but Paolo strangles one of them and manages to finish him off. At the same time, Hazel resists the infected attacking her alone and eventually manages to eliminate them. However, one of them bites her before she kills him, and Hazel collapses. She asks Paolo to stay away from her so she doesn't hurt him, but he refuses, saying it's impossible for him to abandon her and he will be by her side all the time. Marasigan asks Butch and Jane to enter a specific room and hide there away from any harm. Marasigan prepares his weapons that he will use to eliminate the infected. A fierce battle begins, with Marasigan being the stronger party, able to eliminate a very large number of them in record time. Oscar decides to avenge his son David at this time and leaves his apartment to search for Butch and Jane. When he finds them, he pulls out his weapon and threatens to kill them in revenge for his son and to allow Marasigan to feel the pain he is going through due to the loss of his son. Talking to Butch and moves her flashlight, revealing her face to him. Butch manages to hit him very hard, causing him to fall to the ground. At this time, Marasigan is outside, luring the infected towards him. When they come out to him, the fight continues between them as usual. Marasigan manages to eliminate them, but at the last moment, one of the infected bites him in the back. At this moment, Butch gathers her strength and fights to be able to search for Jane and protect her from Oscar, who wants to kill her. She notices a knife on the ground and takes it to defend Jane against Oscar. Jane is hiding next to the wall, holding her flashlight. Oscar continues to search for her, but when he gets close to her, Butch attacks him very violently, causing him to drop his weapon to the ground. Butch takes the weapon and fires shots into the air to divert them, but the infected are attracted to the sound and start searching for the source. Butch manages to stab Oscar with the knife in his neck, and he dies in the end. Jane is hiding among boxes and many things. When Marasigan finds her, the infected are very close to her. He communicates with her using sign language and asks her to come to him without making a sound. He reassures her and asks her not to be afraid. He manages to save her in the end, and when she comes to him, he hugs her. Marasigan gives Jane the car keys that he brought with Timoi at the beginning and asks her to go to Marikina City as Oscar said. But they refuse to go without him. Marasigan confesses to Butch that he got bitten and asks her to take Jane and go away from him before the symptoms appear on him. The last farewell moments between them are very emotional, and Butch breaks down in tears, hugging Jane. She asks Marasigan not to leave her again, but he tells her that his place will be in her heart, and he will feel her. Butch takes Jane, gets into the car, and drives away. The symptoms start to appear on Marasigan, and he holds the drawing that Jane drew and contemplates it before he dies, and the movie ends.